Shalom. So, this is going to be the session recap for our session 0 and session 1 of my third total campaign, but the first campaign with this whole collective group. I like to name the different sessions, so this session will be named A Long Voyage. And I started with a session 0 of sorts. We had already made characters individually. They spoke with me. And once characters were made, we all met up this past weekend. I went over a few rules. So I will have a link in the description of the handout I handed out that contained all the rules that we're going to enforce, any homebrew rules that we're going to be using, or any tweaks to the vanilla rules, or maybe the vanilla rules that we're actually enforcing now that we didn't enforce for the few that were in last campaign. Moving on, then I went to go explain some information about the world that everyone's character would know. They are starting on the Astral Plane, which, for those that don't know, it is the interplanar highway of the multiverse. It touches the material plane, Nine Hells, Elysium. So it acts as a highway for any angels, fiends, powerful wizards. And in my world, based on the ramifications of last campaign, the Planeswalker spark has ignited. So I'm taking a lot of inspiration from Magic the Gathering. So it's been 200 years since the spark has been reintroduced into the multiverse. So because of that, the consequence is that there's been a lot more planar travel, and people are actually learning that there are other planes other than the prime material. So we start in the city of Tenecris. All 7 of my party members are acting as security for a cruise ship of sorts that sails between Tunareth, the Githyanki capital, and Tenecris, a outlying region or city in the Astral Plane of the charted and well-known portions of the Astral Plane, and then it connects to Ravnica through a planar portal. These are 3 main stops, and so I'll move on to information about the world that everyone would know. So 200 years have passed since Planeswalkers began sprouting up. Since it has returned, the Planeswalker Spark was housed in a very powerful magical artifact, or every potential Planeswalker Spark was held and concealed in a powerful artifact in the prime material plane known as Volrock. And at the end of last campaign, it was released, and an infinite number of individual little sparks began to fly up and escaped into the multiverse, tagging and inserting themselves into every living humanoid there is in the multiverse. So, 200 years have gone by since then, and the multiverse has taken up the Volrosian calendar to pay respect to that plane that housed such power. Most of the planes maintain the majority of their original order. However, accommodations and precautions have been made for any interplanar threats that may come up because of this situation. So, we start off with Rico Capasa, a raccoonus, a 3-foot-tall bipedal raccoon person, a homebrew race that I just released. Starts off having each of you stand rank and file, and he then goes ahead to explain that their job here is to be security, make sure nothing goes awry, and if it does, keep it on the down low so the guests keep having a good time. The ship's name is the Infinity's Paradise, and he is the co-owner of this ship with his brother Garvey. So, he introduces himself, goes over rules and what to keep in mind, and then leaves the room, and that's when I had everyone go ahead and introduce themselves. So, just for anyone that isn't my players that's listening, we have a Tabaxi barbarian, and her name is Jade the Hunter. Next after her is a tiefling fighter known as Devotion, and he is probably the most statistically normal person in the group, so it's going to be interesting how he progresses, but I have high hopes for his character. Going over then, next we have a Minotaur and former Boros Legionnaire known as Overin, and after him we have a half-elf of unknown class thus far, known as Card. And he, while none of the other characters may know this, the players have picked up that he has a voice in his head. Moving to the left of him, there is a GIF gunslinger. So for those that don't know what GIF are, they are very tall, ranging from 7 to 9 foot tall hippopotamus people. And in my homebrew world, they have taken a chunk of land known as District 11 on Ravnica to make as their home base. However, they contract themselves out and are spread mostly throughout the Astral Plane, but appear pretty much anywhere in the multiverse serving as mercenaries. But their adoptive and foster home is District 11 on Ravnica. After, and his name was Lieutenant Durza. After him, we have Xanathia, and she's a Firbolg cleric, and is so far the quietest of the group, but seems to have the most luck when it comes to dealing with various different circumstances. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So they introduced themselves, got to know each other, and then found Rico again, who just... I failed to describe what he looks like, and he pretty much looks like a 3 foot tall raccoon person. However, he has accountant glasses, a ratty looking suit, and a messed up tie, and a giant double bladed battle axe. He cares a lot about numbers, but he has a sense of humor, so I at least I think the players have taken pretty good liking to him. So, after a few hours, guests begin pouring into the ship, most of them notably being Vidalcan, human, or elves. And to those that are from Ravnica, so that would be Overin and Lieutenant Durza, they noticed that there was a lot of Simic guild members that were on this trip back to Ravnica. So, the ship is about 42 hours long, the trip is 42 hours long, and because there is no night and day, and you don't become tired or really need to eat, you don't even need a walk on the Astral Plane. I presume that because you don't get tired, you're encouraged to work the entire 42 hours that you are there. The patrol goes fairly well. It's quite boring and monotonous. A few of the players tried to pick and listen to some of the rumors that a few of the guests were talking on down low. However, as they approached, most of the guests, as normal, kind of softened their voices or stopped talking until they passed by and then continued their conversation. None of them kind of pushed it any farther than that. But something also of note was Overin the Minotaur was acting as security in the ballroom and was actually in fact approached by a member of the Simic Guild, and he had offered him a job. Nothing too specific. Asked if he was still a formal member of the Boros or whether or not he was retired. And Overin responded that he was in fact retired and is now working and exploring the multiverse. So they continue to spend time. It's now coming close to the end of the trip, and Rico meets up with them again and says, "In a few hours, we will arrive in the city plain of Ravnica. For those who live under a rock, the city is governed by 10 guilds and a neutral party known as the Guild Pact. Plenty of opportunity there. Just watch your back. I think the slaughter games are going to be starting soon. Speeches of the various guild members are going to start in about an hour. I want all of you in the ballroom while they are occurring. Everyone should be there, so make sure there's no stragglers. Discretion is essential if anything goes awry." Then they break. They begin to pour guests into the ballroom, and the speeches of mostly Simic talking about various leaps and bounds that they've made in biogenesis begin to take place. And as Rico comes up to the podium and says, "I'm not a fan of performing, so I'll keep this brief. We have aboard Master Biomancer Harold Newbreed, and he has some knowledge to share on his latest achievement in biogenesis. So can I welcome Mr. Harold Newbreed?" And a merfolk stands from the center of the crowd, makes his way over to the podium, and clears his throat and is about to speak as there is a crash below deck. And then a second one. And Rico quickly locks eyes with each of the player characters as their security, and points downstairs and encourages them to go downstairs. So they begin to descend down. There are bells on each corner at the end of a hallway. Just in case there is an emergency, you can ring it, and if anyone can hear, you can ring it as well. That way it can alert the ship, given the fact that there is no electricity and actual alarms like we're used to nowadays. So they make their way downstairs, and as they're getting closer, they hear a scream and another crash coming from the storage area of the ship. They make their way downstairs, and they see that a puddle of blood sits in the middle of the hallway, right next to an intersection. And as they approach, it's dark and dim. They hear a little bit, it sounds like steam hissing, but this isn't a steam-powered ship. Most Astral ships are powered by psychic energy, and they know that the captain is up still in the captain's quarters guiding the ship along with any crewmates. So it's not steam. Nevertheless, they approach, and they see the puddle on the floor is in fact a pool of blood. However, what catches their eye is a right hand seems to be severed in the middle of the forearm, pinned by a chitinous spike. And as they notice that, Xanathia ends up casting the light cantrip, which in ordinary circumstances is helpful and beneficial, especially since this is dim light. However, because the stealth check I rolled for the monsters that had broken out from storage, they managed to quickly realize with their passive perception that 2 Kuthricks were hiding on the ceiling above them. And that's when we rolled initiative. We had a brief scuffle before a third one broke through a wall and began fighting, and there was a huge confrontation. A lot of the 2 baby ones ended up dying almost instantaneously. However, the adult Kuthric dealt a few damaging blows here and there, but after seeing its younglings died, It burrowed a hole through the floor, using its action to disengage, and then began to crawl alongside the ship to the direction of the ballroom. So bravely, Jade, the tabaxi, dove down and at last minute said, "Overin, grab my tail." And Overin reached, and the tail slipped through, and she went straight through the hole, free floating, throws a hand axe towards the Kuthrik, and nails it, but wasn't enough damage to actually kill it. So the Kuthrik's still crawling. Now she's free falling. The ship is moving faster than she is, and it's now creating a whole lot of stress and worry that, holy shit, did we just kill another player? But next, Card, the half elf of the group, goes up to the hole, lays down, goes pretty much upside down, and uses his wand of web to create a wall of web right in front of where the Kuthrik is crawling, and it ends up getting stuck, and then the Minotaur goes straight through the hole, because it is man-sized, and even though he's bigger, it's the Astral Plane, so he could free float, went through the hole, flipped around, threw a hand axe at the creature, landed the hit, and it ended up dying. They spent a few minutes to survey the battlefield, make sure there were none others hiding or burrowing holes throughout the lower deck. However, as they began to explore, they went deeper into a singular storage room following a blood trail, and they saw the remains of the deckhand whose hand was severed. His innards completely removed, and you could see the front part of his spine, and his ribs were wide open. Now, as players do, they searched the body, and on the body they found a little bit of gold, his master key still in his pocket to the ship, and a mostly written notes closed in his pocket, now blood-stained, speaking to a Delilah, who is a human woman who is on Ravnica, who has been initiated into the Rakdos cult. And it is a letter begging her to please don't go there. Don't join the Rakdos. Only sadness, madness, and death can await you there. Nevertheless, Card keeps hold the letter, sees it as a possible plot hook, and they return to Rico. At this point now, the ship is on high alert. Rico has locked everyone in the ballroom, and as they return, he asks for analysis. There's a few quick exchanges of, there's going to be some major repairs to the ship. But nevertheless, that conversation ends, and they only have about an hour before they reach the planar portal to Ravnica. As they do, outside the blue and red portal, ship-sized, there is 2 asteroids on the right and left of the portal. The one holds both of them hold outposts. One of them holds the Githyanki flag, for those that can speak Gith, which would be Card and Lieutenant Durza. They see, and they recognize it. It's a circular glyph, as Gith text is notated, saying Long Conquest. And then on the left, they see the Ravnica 10 Guild sigil on a banner. They sail through and take in the cityscape. They see New Prov. They see Nivix. To the far left, Lieutenant Durza sees District 11 far to the west. and they see the barren ruins of the rubble belt north, where the Gruul make their home. They sail down and make their way to New Prov, where they dock. They see at where they are docking a male blue Vidalcan, noble dressed, bald, and 6 individual Azorius knights. They park, and that's where we took our break. We took about an hour or so. We leveled everyone up, so now they are level 2, and then we picked up from there. The Vidalcan met them and introduced himself, said that he was a member of the Guild Pact Chamber, and if any of them were interested in work, they should meet him there. So they took that, met with Rico, got paid 60 gold each and 20 silver pieces, and then went down from New Prov and decided what path they wanted to go down. They decided to immediately go meet with Nasius Ven, the Vidalcan, and forgot that he was taking Master Biomancer. Oh, shit, my bad. Failed to mention, the Kuthricks were in a cage that was labeled Master Biomancer Harold Newbreed, which was the gentleman that was just about to speak. So, because the incident and the death, the Azorius wanted to take him in for questioning, so that is why the Azorius and Nasius Ven were there waiting for them. So, Nasius and the Knights took Harold Newbreed down for questioning, and because of that, the players went straight to the Hall of the Guild Pact and didn't meet with Nasius because he wasn't there. He was dealing with prisoner. Misinterpretation, but that happens. So instead they meet with a little goblin, older gentleman, silver hair, a messy of sorts ponytail, dressed in noble attire for a goblin, and he introduced himself as it's there in my notes, but now it's not. Well, guess we'll have to write the name. Think it was I'll probably X this out. Anyway, I forget his name. I'll look it up in the notes anyways. Or ask one of the players that remembers, because I will do better. But anyways, they met with him and picked up a lead. Well, in fact, 2 leads. They noticed that next to Deathbridge Chasm, there was a missing persons case. A little boy named Timothy was reported missing 2 days ago, last seen near the Deathbridge Chasm, and they also heard the name Jeremy, who was reported missing last seen near the Gore House in Foundry Street. So they took that information and noticed that Timothy, or the Deathbridge Chasm, is actually remarkably close to the Gore House. So they figured they were going to be able to get a 3-in-1, maybe find all of them there at the Gore House, since Natalie was at Rakdos, Jeremy was last seen at the Gore House, and for those who don't know, the Gore House is a nightclub. However, it is located just above the Rakdos Guild Hall, known as Rixmati, which is the lair of the demon Rakdos, who is the guild master. So they figured they could try and get 3 in 1. So they made their way over to the Gore House midday and noticed a tall ogre standing in front of the door. Door is still closed. There's the Rakdos symbol over top with the Gore House title underneath it. And it kind of stands out in comparison to all the other oddities and buildings there on Foundry Street. They look at the ogre, and then there are 4 people still waiting in line, arriving early, dressed in leathers and red paint. They very quickly skip through line, cause a few bad looks to be turned their way from the 4 gentlemen that were waiting. But then, because they have a Boros Legionnaire in their party, and a few lucky die rolls, they managed to convince the 4 people that were there waiting to believe that they were trying to sell them drugs, and this was like a minor sting operation. Also, it was kind of funny and humorous, so I went with it, and they were going to come back later anyways. So, maybe possible witnesses that may show up if one of the party members or something drastic happens while they are located in the Gore House. So then they talk to the ogre, and he's not the brightest individual. However, he has a job to do. He's not letting anyone in till the place opens. So they first begin trying to bring up that they're on a case, and they begin asking some questions, and then they just offer him a bribe. And looks at the bribe, says it's too late. Party's like, oh, well, shoot. And Card quickly and deceptively, taking note that the ogre isn't the brightest thing in the world, offers him some more coins, but silver coins. And he takes those and says, okay, lets them in. Meet with, I have the name. Fuck. Okay, well, another named NPC. It's a red-scaled lizard folk. I think his name was Voyage, who is the proprietor of the Gore House. They begin asking him some questions, whether or not he's seen Natalie, Timothy, or Jeremy. And really, they're going to only off of first names. However, none of them tried to make too many insight checks into Voyage's intentions, but he was answering pretty forthfront and honestly, and he was like, okay, let me pull out some paperwork, I'll double check the names, and I don't remember exactly which player it was, but one of them ended up saying, oh wow, there's a lot of bookkeeping here for a Rakdos guild member. And that should have been their first clue, because Voyage went under the counter, not to grab the paperwork for anyone entering or leaving. He instead grabbed a flamethrower, or the equivalent of stolen from an Azet chemister, and quickly sprayed a blast of fire towards all of them. And that's where we ended the session. We'll resolve that surprise round, and then roll initiative afterwards. And the way I can justify, beyond him just being Rakdos and wanting to kill the Boros Legionnaire that is in his dominion right above the Rakdos Guild Hall, is that they went in asking a fuck ton of questions about some missing people. But the other thing that is pretty interesting, and I kind of put a few seeds here and there, where the Slaughter games are starting soon. Rico mentioned that earlier at the beginning of the session. I'm not sure if any of the players noticed that or not, but behind the scenes, and I like taking a few civil liberties with the lore and kind of twisting it so that way even a lot of my friends play Magic the Gathering, even they can be surprised. So, to the Boros Legionnaire Overin and Lieutenant Durza, who has lived on Ravnica, the Slaughter Games are a game of destroying social elites such as Boros members, Azorius law mages, and the like. So this was a fantastic opportunity to have him say the catchphrase of, well, the Slaughter Games can begin. And also, you don't go into someone's shop and just start asking questions as their rival clan. So I think this can be pretty interesting. They've definitely gotten to some deep water, but they may be onto a case. There's 3 missing people in this local area, and even if not all of them are here, they could possibly make a few good connections, make a good name for themselves after maybe rescuing at least one of these people from in here. But depends on how devoted and committed they are to going straight through the Gore House, trying to see if they can find anyone worth salvaging or is even still alive. But it's up to them. They could dip out and try and run away, but that will have its own ramifications. I was not expecting this. And also a note I forgot to mention was when they were at the Chamber of the Guild Pact meeting with Mr. Unnamed Goblin, because I can't remember his name. Oh, it was Gerald. Gerald. We will write that down. While they were meeting with him, he received a message from Nasius, which claimed that there was a prison break at Sawtooth Prison. So that's another opportunity for them to go down if they wanted to meet with Nasius and possibly get another job. So that'll be for next few sessions to determine. But a lot of things are in motion right now. They have a lot of different quest lines to choose from, and could even return and continue working for Rico. Their next stop is Tunareth, the capital of the Githyanki Empire, but I have a feeling that probably won't happen because a few of them are very against the idea of going to the Gith capital. And I don't know. I like it. Prepping for Ravnica is fun. So I will see you next week. Thank you for listening. And to my players, thank you for playing. I appreciate you. And anyone else that's listening, I do the same. I appreciate you. And shout out to Matt Colville. He kind of gave me the idea of doing campaign diaries or session recaps. I think it's a good exercise, and obviously, hopefully, they get a little bit more fluid and organized. But that my players know me. I'm a little scatterbrained, so deal with it. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.